Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today, courtesy of Salty Sailor, we have a battle for you in the USS Atlanta, premium Tier 7 cruiser here in World of Warships, and the lead ship of 8 Atlanta-class cruisers built for the US Navy during World War II. I do have to say, I think the Atlanta is an absolutely beautiful ship, and situationally she can be very powerful, almost to the point of being overpowered. However, she pays for that with several quite substantial weaknesses. The biggest strength is her guns. She has 16 of them. That's also her biggest weakness because these are 5-inch guns. These are effectively the same guns that you get on American destroyers from Tier 5 and up. That makes the Atlanta the cruiser at Tier 7 with the shortest range on its main battery guns. They only have a range of 11.1 kilometers. But it's not about sniping targets at long range in the Atlanta, it's all about the volume of fire. With this many guns able to be brought to bear on target, you can get off anything between 80 and 140 shots per minute, and anything that's unfortunate enough to get your attention at sufficiently close range. Now this does mean that the Atlanta has something of a reputation as a high explosive spammer, and well, there's a lot of truth in that, but the armour piercing situationally can produce spectacular results. Primarily against enemy cruisers that are showing you the broad flat side of the ship at very, very short ranges, where the shots are pretty much travelling in a straight line towards the target. You can even penetrate the side armour of battleships, providing you aim above the side armour belt, providing the range is close enough that the trajectory of your armour piercing shells is nice and flat. And we are talking about suicidally close ranges here. Ideally, you wouldn't want to get that close to an enemy battleship. Certainly not in a Tier 7 cruiser, and certainly not a German battleship, because their secondaries will make mincemeat of you. And that's another one of the Atlanta's problems. She's been likened to sort of halfway between a cruiser and halfway between a destroyer, and again, there's a lot of truth in that as well. But as a cruiser, the Atlanta has one thing that a destroyer doesn't have. It has a citadel. And that's bad news for the Atlanta because it shares something else in common with destroyers: absolutely flimsy armour. Salty Sailor bringing his guns to bear on the enemy Akatsuki, who was momentarily spotted there, which is quite ironic because during the naval battle of Guadalcanal in 1942, the Akatsuki illuminated the Atlanta with her searchlights and made herself a sitting duck for the combined fire of not just the Atlanta but a whole bunch of destroyers and other American cruisers. And that resulted in the loss of the Akatsuki, although the Battle of Guadalcanal also saw the loss of the Atlanta herself during a very, very confused night action where she took hits both from the Japanese and friendly fire from other American ships. Now, Salty Sailor didn't manage to get any shots at the Akatsuki, but he also didn't get spotted by the Akatsuki, which means he was able to get some shots at the Fuso and then get that island between himself and the Fuso's massed ranks of 14-inch guns, and this is where the Atlanta excels, beating the snot out of destroyers. Now this Gnevny is screwed. He's got nowhere to go. He's got enemy destroyers on both sides of him, and he's being forced to hold a straight course as he's trying to shoot up the Fubuki and stay out of the way of his torpedoes, and that pretty much means he's not watching where he's going. The Atlanta is piling shots into him. He's about to run aground, and there's first blood. But smoke screen ahead, there is another destroyer in the smoke. And this is where the Atlanta plays its trump card. The Atlanta has radar. I have to admit, the first time I saw this, it amused me greatly. The Kiev is paying no attention whatsoever to the fact that there's an Atlanta steaming around the headland right in front of him. In fact, Salty Sailor doesn't even need the radar now because his smoke's gone, and he's still just sitting there pumping shots into the Fubuki, completely oblivious to the fact that his doom is approaching. Look at this. And there's his second kill. So, good start. Fuso can't fire, he's on the other side of the island. But this is where things go a little bit pear-shaped. Somebody is piling shots into that Fubuki, and the Fubuki is a sitting duck with his engine knocked out. Now, he's firing off his torpedoes into the smoke in a last-ditch attempt, but he has just been taken out. And that means the Atlanta's worst nightmare has just been realised. 2 enemy cruisers at very, very short range. Salty Sailor immediately switches to the armour piercing and targets the Emerald, but even at that kind of angle and this kind of range, 127mm armour piercing is not penetrating the Emerald's side, and the Königsberg has managed to avoid the Fubuki's torpedoes. But he didn't avoid the Emerald's torpedoes. And now the Emerald is nice and flat on, and look at that. 12 citadels. Holy shit. That's the armor piercing. Under the right circumstances, at the right target, well, the Emerald just ceased to exist. The target pretty much has to be at an exact 90-degree angle to you, otherwise, as you saw in the first two salvos at the Emerald, when it was only slightly angled, it was just bounce city. But once it's nice and flat on, absolute devastation. And here comes another enemy destroyer. Apparently the enemy destroyers just didn't get the memo that it's an incredibly bad idea to get into a gunfight with an Atlanta. Now, he's knocked his engine out, but it looks like this guy has the last stand skill. He is still moving. And judging by the shots coming out of the smokescreen, it looks like he's reversing. There's the first set of torpedoes. Relatively easy to avoid those. Salty Sailor does need to nail this guy because he's currently spotting him for the Fuso, and he has taken substantial damage from the Fuso. There's the second set of torpedoes. He's definitely reversing back into the smoke. There was a hit, and he's going to spot him any second now. There he is, and there is no surviving this. There's just no surviving this. Look at how quickly these guns reload. And he's dead, and Salty Sailor is no longer being spotted, which means he can now turn his attention to the Fuso. Load the high explosive, boys. It's barbecue time. Now, one of the other features of the Atlanta, in common with American destroyers armed with 5-inch guns, is the incredibly high ballistic arc of its shells. You can basically lob shots right over obstacles and hit targets on the other side. Unfortunately, the headland of that particular island isn't quite enough of an obstacle, and the Fuso is able to fire back. However, he's got a nice slow reload on those 14-inch guns, so Salty Sailor starts reversing as the Fuso realises the kind of shit that he's in and starts putting some speed on in order to try to get out of the way of all of these 5-inch guns. He's managed to set him on fire, he's hit him multiple times, somebody else is lighting him up, and he's managed to get out of the line of fire, so the Fuso has been forced to switch to another target. Salty Sailor is still detected, but he's no longer getting shot at by the Fuso, so that's good news. Salty Sailor now concentrating on the capture, making sure he doesn't get reset, and he's capturing Alpha. And he's there in chat, offering commiserations to the Emerald, but, well, the Emerald team killed the Königsberg. There's no excuse for it. He fired torpedoes from behind a friendly cruiser and sank him, so the Emerald got exactly what he deserved. That's just karma. I have heard people say that if you're playing World of Warships and you haven't yet managed to accidentally team kill somebody with your torpedoes, then you just haven't played enough games of World of Warships yet, and, well, yeah, that's probably true. Now, while I'm positive the Emerald didn't intend to team kill the Königsberg, and I'm sure Salty Sailor isn't objecting to it because it got him out of a potentially tricky situation, but there's an accidental team kill and then there's a reckless team kill, and the Emerald was reckless. He fired his torpedoes from behind a friendly ship, and he fired them across the path of that friendly ship. Under those circumstances, you have to expect a team kill. Hopefully, the Emerald learned something. Meanwhile, Salty Sailor sneaking a few more shots off against the Fuso as he creeps between the Narrows and these two islands after capturing Alpha, and is rewarded with setting another fire on the Fuso. It's probably safe to say that the Fuso is not going to be applying for membership of the Salty Sailor fan club anytime soon. Salty Sailor has been detected momentarily by the enemy Saipan's aircraft, which means that that Fuso is probably waiting for him to come around the corner of this island. However, Salty Sailor knows something that the Fuso probably doesn't. There's a friendly T-22 destroyer closing in on the Fuso as well. And sure enough, the Fuso is sitting broadside on with all of his guns pointing in this direction. Salty Sailor unleashes a few shots with his forward gun battery. He's not stupid enough to sail broadside on. With Fuso that's waiting for him takes moderate damage. And that's when the Fuso spots the T-22. He starts turning. He is no longer targeting Salty Sailor, and his gun turrets are swinging around. That's fantastic news for Salty Sailor, and incredibly bad news for the T-22, as the Fuso unloads a broadside into him and sinks him. But with the Fuso and its guns now pointing in the other direction, Salty Sailor can afford to expose more of the side of this ship and get all of these gun barrels pointing and firing at the Fuso. There go the T-22's torpedoes, missed by a country mile. The Fuso is burning from stem to stern. He starts swinging the ship around. His guns are probably going to be reloaded by now. Salty Sailor starts narrowing the angle. The Fuso can still penetrate him even from the front, but he's presenting a narrower target. Yep, could have been worse. Salty Sailor now has a maximum of 30 seconds to finish this Fuso off, less if the Fuso has the adrenaline rush skill and is able to reload his guns faster. He's now within range of the Fuso's secondaries, but the Fuso's secondaries are terrible. He's managed to set him on fire again, and it's going to stick because he's used his damage control consumable, and Kraken unleashed. And a sneaky little arsonist award into the bargain, and that's when he spots the enemy carrier, the Saipan's torpedo bombers, incoming. Now, the Atlanta does have a very powerful anti-aircraft armament, but his defensive fire cooldown is, well, on cooldown, and the Saipan has tier 9 aircraft. Those are Douglas Sky Raiders. He's managed to kill one of them, but 2 of them are going to get through, and this is where the Saipan learns the hard way, because that was a guaranteed kill. The Saipan learns the hard way that torpedoes do actually have a minimum arming distance. He dropped them far too short. He's so desperate to beat the Atlanta's anti-aircraft fire, obviously expecting that he would have his defensive fire cooldown up, and he didn't, that he dropped them far too short and they just bounced harmlessly off the side before the fuses could arm. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Let's talk about the Saipan for a moment. Premium Tier 7 aircraft carrier, but it's unique. It's the only American aircraft carrier that gets 2 torpedo bomber squadrons. And they are powerful aircraft. They're Tier 9, as you can see. It takes a lot to shoot them down. Similarly, the fighters are also Tier 9. Those are Corsairs, very, very powerful aircraft, but they come in small squadrons. By default, they only have 3 aircraft per squadron, although you can upgrade that to 4 aircraft per squadron. The other loadout for the Saipan is 3 squadrons of fighters and 1 squadron of dive bombers. Now again, these are Douglas Sky Raiders. They're Tier 9 dive bombers, but the squadron is huge. By default, it comes with 8 aircraft, and you can upgrade that to 9. They're armed with 1,000-pound bombs, which can each do over 10,000 damage. I found out the hard way in my Fuso exactly what a Saipan is capable of doing to even a well-armoured battleship if it lands multiple hits with those 10,000-pound bombs. But if somebody gets close to a Saipan, like this, and there's the high caliber, and very shortly the Confederate award, it has no secondaries, and it's completely defenseless. And the team are about to reach 1,000 points, and that's a win. 750,000 credits, 114,000 damage done, 4,000 experience, 808 free experience, 5 kills, first blood, arsonist, Kraken unleashed, 2 devastating strikes, high caliber, and Confederate in the premium Tier 7 American cruiser, the USS Atlanta. That was Salty Sailor Bell having a fantastic time in one of my favourite ships in World of Warships. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Salty Sailor Bell, thank you for sending that one in, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.